I want to introduce our speaker today. It's Rick Geary. He's grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and he has a great story. You all know him. You know his work. You know, I think I've mentioned that his work is as distinctive as, say, like a Norman Rockwell or Ellen Clapsaddle or whatever. They just jump out at you. You know, that's a Rick Geary card. And especially if some of his people, like me or you or anybody that he's made a little caricature of, that is in his postcards. He's a life member, he and his wife both, of the Wichita Postcard Club, and they've retired and moved to Carrizozo, New Mexico. That's in the Lincoln County area, home of the Billy the Kid and the some kind of Lincoln County wars and things like that. So Rick has a great story, and that's why he's here today to share that with us. We're just proud to have him as a member of our club all of these years, and we really thank him for coming today. We're pleased to have him, and I'm rather than talk further about his background, I'm going to let him show you. And so take it away, Rick, and thanks for coming again.
Well, thank you, Hal. And I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to say a special hi to Jennifer and George. It's been a long time. And also to Sandy Waters. It's really good to see you. Okay, this is my postcard life. It's kind of a survey of my artistic career, especially as regards postcards, but also other venues. As of this year, I've done well over 1,000 postcards since I started. And I wish I could show them all, but we'd be here till next Saturday. Okay, let's go. Next. Okay, Wichita, Kansas, 1972. I kind of date the start of my artistic career to Wichita in the summer of 1972. I grew up in Wichita and went to Southeast High, and then went off to the University of Kansas in Lawrence. And in the summer of 72, I was living in Los Angeles, and I was working at a movie theater, but in my spare time, I was drawing pictures. I've always drawn pictures all my life. But as far as making a career out of it, I had no idea how to go about that. I was kind of clueless. And about this time, a good friend of mine, Barry Paris, said, move back to Wichita, I'm starting a weekly paper. This is it. It was called the New Newspaper of Wichita, Kansas, and it had its first issue in December of 72. And I was hired on as the all-purpose cartoonist, illustrator, artist of all work. I designed the headline up at the top, the logo, and the picture of the building, which is still standing. The what they call the Flatiron Building, built on a triangle of land at 21st and Broadway in Wichita. And I can't imagine a better education for an artist than working on a weekly paper like this. I was called upon to do pretty much everything, like political cartoons, caricatures, portraits, illustrations of all kinds. I even hand-lettered headlines to the stories. This is one of the cover drawings I did. And the New Newspaper lasted until about a year and a half, until the May of 1974. After the New Newspaper folded, another paper, weekly, the Wichita Independent, started, and I was hired on to be do pretty much the same thing, be an artist of all, taking all kinds of assignments. This little paper didn't even last as long as the previous one. It was gone by the summer of 1975. In 1975, I moved to San Diego, and I immediately became a contributor to the Reader, which is a weekly paper there, which is still going. I ended up illustrating this column called Straight from the Hip, which is a question and answer column. And I did a weekly illustration for 36 years for this column until they finally dropped the column in 2013. The San Diego Comic-Con was something very important in my career. I have to say I didn't grow up with comic books. I've never been a comic collector or fan or anything like that. Superheroes were very far from my area of interest. But once I was in San Diego, I got to meet a lot of the people who were involved with the Comic-Con, which back then was a very small and intimate event, took place in one room, unlike the bloated, huge concern that it is today. And I designed the toucan mascot, which you see here. And I also did a lot of illustrations for their early program books and whatever other incidental art that they needed. And it kind of set me on the road to a career in comics, which I never thought would happen. This is the first page of a little 3-page story, which is my first comic book story. It appeared in a one-shot comic called Fear and Laughter. And it's an account of an unsolved murder which took place in Wichita in 1966. A friend of mine was a former policeman, and he gave me a copy of the complete police report for this unsolved murder from several years earlier. And I pored over it. I memorized every clue and every bit of information, and I turned it into this little story. National Lampoon in 1979. This is one of their early covers from when the Lampoon was in its heyday in the early 70s. I came on in 1979. A friend of mine took some of my work with him to New York and visited the Lampoon offices and showed them my work, and they took me on as a contributor to the section of the magazine called the Funny Pages. This was my first comic in the Lampoon from the fall of '79. It was a little fantasy about riding the bus in San Diego, which I was doing a lot of in those days once my car broke down. And it led to a pretty regular career contributing to the Lampoon until the magazine folded in 1992. Postcards. I've always been a postcard collector myself, but I never thought of illustrating postcards until Hal came to me. And this was for their second annual show, the first card I did for them in 1979. This was the second card I did for the 1980 show, and it was the first card in color. I didn't do the color. I submitted the black and white illustration, and a digital artist added the color. 1984 was the first National Postcard Week card I did, which led to many others. This is for the 11th show in 1988, and it was the first one in full color. And from this point on, all the cards I did for them were fully colored by me. In 1990 was the first member card. All of them from this point onward have a character someplace on the card reading the newsletter, and it always has the year on it. This is from 1994, and by this time the member card had become kind of standardized in that it featured a Wichita business or landmark. This one for the Coleman Company, and some of the others we've done over the years, like White Castle and Pizza Hut and Mentholatum, and other landmark buildings like the Orpheum Theater and the Keeper of the Plains. I could go on, but it's always fun every year to see what they're going to come up with next for the next card. This was a special card I did in '96 for the first 5 life members of the club. I would, get to see them and chat with them every year at the meeting at the postcard show. Hal Ottaway. Now we come to some of the long-time clients that have come to me pretty regularly to do postcards. Hal, of course, I've known for many years, even before the Postcard Club, because he and I both had an interest in collecting political memorabilia. And this is a first card I did for Hal in 1982. The first of 47 cards I've done for Hal to this date. This one to promote his interest in presidential campaign postcards. Here's another one for Hal, which reflects his interest in Great Britain and the royal family. I've done a total of 12 cards featuring Hal in some way honoring the royal family or Great Britain, including 3 cards that feature the Rolling Stones. Here's one for Hal's birthday. This is BJ and Jonelle Davies, who've been longtime friends of my wife's and mine, and one of my earliest postcard clients. He and his wife, Jonelle, I've done 65 postcards for them as of this year. This is the first one I did for him in 1987 for his interest in county courthouses. This is just for Kansas county courthouses, but he has a huge collection of courthouses from all over the country. This is one for Jonelle Davies, reflecting her interest in folk tales, fairy tales, children's literature on postcards. This is a unique one I did for the Davies. It's what's called an installment cards. I did a huge drawing for Kansas Day featuring different Kansans, historical Kansans, and it was eventually cut into 4 equal postcards that were sent out separately. It's called, installment cards. This is another one typical of the cards I did for BJ and Jonelle Davies. This is the Crest Theater in Wichita. You people from Wichita might recall it as being a landmark at the corner of Oliver and Douglas Avenues in Wichita. And I have a personal connection with it in that, first of all, I used to haunt this place as a kid. I'd see movies there all the time. And later on, I served as assistant manager for a few months. And I was always fascinated by the modernist design of the place, the exterior and interior, which was full of great murals and all kinds of decorative touches. Unfortunately, it was closed in 1989 and then demolished. It fell victim to the fate of many of the neighborhood single-screen theaters around the country. People just didn't go to them anymore. The multiplexes were king, and now the Crest Theater is gone to make way for an Italian restaurant and a parking lot there at that corner. Now, these are some more of longtime clients that have come to me. Danny and Kathy Danielson of the St. Louis area. I did a total of 8 cards for them. This is one reflecting Danny's interest in horse-drawn delivery wagon postcards. And they were dealers who used to come to the postcard show pretty regularly. This is a specialty card I did for Jane and Stan Pepper, who were also regulars at the show. This is for Jewish New Year in 1985. After Stan passed away, Jane Pepper kept up with me and every year for National Postcard Week, she was ordered a card which would feature the various newsmakers of that particular year. In this one, 2004, I featured the different Democrats who were running to run against George Bush. Alan Grabb was this dealer who was based in Maine and also Florida. He divided his year between Maine and Florida. He had an artificial leg, I was told, and he collected peg leg postcards. And each year I did 3 cards for him, one for National Postcard Week and one for when he left for Maine to move to Florida, and another for when he moved back from Florida to Maine. I did 32 cards for him in all from 1985 to 92. Boyd, this is the first card I did for him, reflecting his interest in veterinary related postcards. It's good to see you here today, Trenton, also. I did 7 cards for him total from 1984 to 2005. Gilbert and Margaret Pittman were 2 Wichita people who were good friends. I'd see them every year at the show. I did 11 cards for them in total, starting in 1987 with this one, reflecting National Postcard Week and also reflecting Gilbert's interest in military cards. 2 other Wichita people, John and Dolores Pittman. John and Gilbert were brothers, twin brothers, I'm told. And I would see them every year at the show as well. This was a card that was printed on shiny silver stock, although it doesn't come out in the reproduction very well, but in person, it was a very striking card. Art Craig of Washington, D.C. was a longtime client. This is one of the first ones I did for him, reflecting his interest in soap opera cards. I would always caricature him like this with wild hair, and he appreciated that, I was told. I did 24 cards for him in total from 1989 to 2001. This was another card I did for Art Craig. It was the only double wide card I've ever done. It's what folds in the middle. And it's to commemorate a charitable event that was held every year in St. Louis, in which women were asked to donate their old brassieres, and they were all tied together and stretched across the Mississippi Bridge. And money was collected somehow, I'm not sure, because more than that, I didn't want to know. 1988, I moved to New York City, and I became a contributor to the New York Times Book Review. This is one of the cover illustrations I did. I maybe did 3 or 4 cover illustrations, but most of what I did were interiors. It was a pretty standardized way they had working with artists. I would get a telephone call maybe on Thursday of a week, and they'd say, come in tomorrow, we have an assignment. So I'd take the subway up to 42nd Street where the Times office was, and I'd meet with the art director, and he would give me a copy of the review of a particular book, and then I would have the weekend to come up with an illustration and bring it in on Monday morning. And there were 2 or 3 times when I'd bring in this complete illustration. I didn't even do a pencil rough for approval. I just brought in the finished illustration, and the art director didn't like it. So he'd give me one more day to do a completely different illustration. That maybe happened once or twice, but most of the time they were satisfied with whatever I brought them, luckily. In 1989, when I was living in New York, a publisher in Chicago decided they bought the rights to the old Classics Illustrated series. I used to buy them. They were it was a very popular series in the 1940s up into the 1950s and 60s. Then they stopped publication. So someone came up with the idea of reviving Classics Illustrated and using the work of different well-known cartoonists at the time. And I was brought on to do Great Expectations, which was one of the 4 initial books that they started the revival with. And I ended up doing 3 adaptations for Classics Illustrated, Wuthering Heights and The Invisible Man. And then it was a good gig while it lasted. The publisher went out of business, unfortunately. Around this time, I started working with a publisher in New York to bring out a series of graphic novels about famous murder cases of the Victorian era. This was a series called A Treasury of Victorian Murder. And I did all the research myself, and with an eye toward absolute accuracy and clarity, and especially with unsolved cases, which I'm very fond of. I love getting all the clues and all the pieces of information in a followable and easily read order. And I ended up doing 8 volumes in the Treasury of Victorian Murder series. About that time, I felt I'd done the Victorian era, so I started the Treasury of 20th Century Murder. This was the first one. It was the story of the kidnapping and murder of Charles Lindbergh's son in 1931, which even though someone was tried and convicted and executed for it, it remains a mystery. There are still a lot of questions, unanswered questions about it. And I found it a fascinating case. I ended up doing 6 volumes for the 20th Century Murder series. Around the same time I was doing books about grisly murder cases, I was also doing work for children's publishers. This is one of 3 Spider-Man children's books that I wrote and illustrated in the 90s. As I mentioned before, I was never a comic book fan. I knew nothing about Spider-Man. So I had to kind of catch up and do my homework before before writing these books. I assume they came out okay. I also did a series of 3 books for Dark Horse Comics featuring The Mask, which was one of their more popular characters back then. I don't know if you remember the Jim Carrey movie, which was adapted from those comics, but they thought they'd do a series of children's books to accompany, as inspired by the comics and the movie. And this is one of 3 that I did. Disney Adventures, through some friends of mine, I got to contribute to this little Disney magazine, which isn't published anymore, but for quite a while it was one of these small dimension magazines that you'd see for sale at supermarket checkout lines and places like that. It was for very young children. And I wrote and illustrated this series called Society of Horrors, which was kind of a whimsical take on 3 misfit kids and their misadventures. So for Disney, I contributed for about 8 years to that little magazine. Mad Magazine, this was kind of the culmination of a dream of mine. This is an old cover from July of 1959, which was the year that I first encountered Mad Magazine. I was 13, and it changed my life in subtle ways. It kind of showed me a different way to be a cartoonist. All the different artists working for Mad, I memorized their styles, and I badgered my parents into buying me a subscription. I knew this is what I wanted to do, but I had no idea how to go about it. until 1996 when I was hired on to be a contributor to MAD. This is one of the typical stories I did for MAD. Tip-offs that a Civil War reenactment isn't quite accurate. This is how I received the assignment. Usually the writing was all done, the pages were laid out, and just with blank spaces where the illustrations were to go. And so that made it very easy for me because I like, limited, limitations like that. And I just filled in the illustrations. Here's another children's book that I illustrated for Scholastic, of the life of Harry Houdini. GUMBY came to me in 2006. A lot of people were raised on GUMBY. I wasn't. I never knew about him when I was a kid, but he was kind of a mainstay beginning in 1956 with a series of clay animated shorts for very young children. And in 2006, the company that owned GUMBY, actually the creator of GUMBY was still around then. I got to meet him, Art Clokey, and his family. It was a family-run company who owned the GUMBY characters, and they decided they wanted to put out a series of comic books. And they hired my friend Bob Burden to do the writing, and he asked me to do the illustrations because he and I had been friends for quite a while and had always wanted to work together. Anyway, this was the first GUMBY comic book, and there were two more after this, and then the company went out of business, which is kind of the way things go in the comic world. Anyway, working for GUMBY was just one of the highlights of my career. Now we're back to postcards. Starting in the 90s, there's some further long-term clients that I began working with. Jim Taylor, who I've continued with up to the present day. I've done a total of 56 cards for Jim. And most all of them contain a whimsical portrait of him in the suit and tie and hat there you see on the left. And most of them also contain a goat, which is a reference to our friend Lou Bear, who collects goat postcards. I'm not sure what the weasel means in this one, but all of Jim's cards, or most of them anyway, promote whatever show or sale that he's promoting at the time. This is another interest of Jim's, is atomic bomb imagery. I've done quite a few of those for him, and this was one of my favorites. Collecting postcards is a blast. There's a goat there in the center. Two other long-term clients were Marilyn and Howie Gottlieb, who ran House of Postcards in Rock Hill, New York. It was always fun to see them at the show every year. Their son, Alan Gottlieb, carried on their business, and I've done a total of 21 cards for all three of them together from 1992 just to 2019. One of my most fun long-term clients is Betty Mays, originally in Panacea, Florida. And this first card I did from her from 1994 features her two cats. And they're always talking to each other in one way or another. I've done a total of 30 cards for Betty Mays up in, from 1994 to this year. And they all have the same two cats as the central characters, and then there's an ever-changing cast of minor characters, mostly cats, but also dogs show up. It's always nice to be in touch with Betty every year and to see what kind of new cards she wants. I've done several cards for European collectors over the years in England and Germany and France. And this is the card I did for the collectors in France who are particularly interested in my work, with caricatures of each one of them. Sandy Waters, here's the card I did for her in, let's see, when did I do that one? That was in 1997. And it includes me there on the back of the Flying Rabbit, and with Hal there, and Susan Nicholson. What's unique about this card is that it has the scallops at the very top, which must have been incredibly labor intensive. I think Sandy cut each one of them herself. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it made for a very impressive card. Bert Cohen in Boston, I did 8 cards for him. He collected marbles on postcards. And every year, starting in 1999, 1998, sorry, I did a card for him. Lois Powell in Saginaw, Michigan was another long-term client. I did 11 cards for her starting in 1999. And usually all of them would commemorate the birth year of a particular celebrity. And this one, Louis Armstrong. John Saunders of Wellington, Kansas, was a longtime friend of mine, and I would see him at the show every year, and he would hire me to do pictures of different buildings and landmarks of southeastern Kansas. This being one of my favorites, the old bathhouse in Gouda Springs. The late and lamented Postcard Collector magazine came to me for 3 cover illustrations, starting in 2002, and they would also issue them as postcards to be distributed along with the magazine. Dick and Julia Ruth were people I would see every year at the show, and Dick would come and sit at my table and chat every year about what postcard he wanted me to do next. Every one of them had to do with what they called the Gray Goose, one of these railroad vehicles which would clear the snow off the tracks. And there are different varieties of them. I ended up doing about 8 different varieties of this. I don't even know what they're called technically, but they collected them on postcards. Here's my friend Damaris. I did 6 cards for her in total, commemorating her various world travels. This was the first one I did, which followed the route of her southwestern excursion in 2014. And during this time, she stopped off with her 3 grandchildren in Carrizozo to visit me at my studio. That was a very special time. It was great to see her and the kids. Leon and Dolores Rowe came to me every year for National Postcard Week card. At first, like this one, it was to advertise their collecting interests. Since Leon's passing, Dolores has hired me every year to do a National Postcard Week card to commemorate some anniversary during that year. This year it was the opening of King Tut's tomb. It's always interesting to see what she'll come up with. Okay, now we come to some cards I did for various collecting clubs and dealers throughout the 90s. This one for the Statue of Liberty Collectors Club, their initial meeting in New York City. This was for people who collected not only postcards of the statue, but all kinds of knickknacks and memorabilia. I did several cards for the Metro East and Gateway Postcard Clubs, begin in the St. Louis area. This is the one for their 5th postcard show. Their excuse me, Danny and Kathy Danielson. This is a kind of a little takeoff from the Norman Rockwell painting with Hal there on the right, and Art Craig and Trenton Boyd down there in the corner, and other postcard aficionados. This is the one I did for the Portland area Webfooters Postcard Club for their 1998 show. Next. This is for the New Jersey Garden State Postcard Show, 40th anniversary, 1999. Fred Kenny is a dealer in Phoenix, and I did a total of 8 cards for him to promote the different shows that he sponsored in the Phoenix area. This is the one over the Halloween weekend in 1998 that was especially fun to do. Washington Crossing Club. This was the first one I did for them in 2002. They come to me every 5 years now to do a commemorative card for the anniversary of their founding. The latest one was just this year for their 50th anniversary. This was an unusual one for the Dallas Postcard Club, in which I was asked to do caricatures of all the members of their board, the founding members of the inner circle. They sent me a whole pile of photographs to work from. This is for their 20th anniversary in 2003. Here's one for the Tulsa T-Town Postcard Club. I did 2 or 3 for them, all of them featuring Route 66. And this one paying tribute to a couple of historic buildings which are in danger of demolition. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they've both been saved. This is the first of 10 cards I did for the Denver Postcard Club every year, featuring National Postcard Week. This one, the Golden Dome of the Capitol building. Hey, over the years, I've done several cards for commercial clients, people who with no connection to postcard collecting or dealing, that just want a postcard for their business or their personal interest. This is one I did for the Comic Book Expo, which was a trade show attached to the San Diego Comic Convention. This is the one for 1992. It's the only postcard I ever did for them. This was a card for a friend of mine. This is a personal card. It was just to promote his interest in collecting California pottery. I did two of these cards for him. This was a special card I did for the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, which is an organization to support, monetarily support comic book dealers around the country who were sometimes face legal problems, censorship problems, to defend them in court and things like that. Anyway, this is their first annual cruise. I'm not sure if there was ever a second annual cruise, but a lot of cartoonists got together and took this cruise down the coast from LA to Puerto Vallarta and back again. And I have to mention, I didn't go on it, but I received a special gift at the end. It was a copy of this postcard, which was signed on the back by all the cartoonists who were on the cruise. Here's another commercial card for a real estate company in Texas. I think Greenville, Texas is the name of the town. And once again, I received photographs of all their employees to reproduce on the card here. The Tacoma Little Theater was a organization that came to me to design logos for each one of their productions. I did illustrations for 6 seasons of this little theater, and what I submitted was a black and white pen and ink drawing, and for the postcards, another artist filled in the color digitally and the background, and I ended up doing about 34 postcards ended up being produced for this theater company. Here's another special card I did for the 50th reunion of the class of 1960 for Woodbury High School in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, featuring all the landmarks of the area that the alumni would recognize, hopefully. The Julian H. Sleeper House in St. Paul, Minnesota is a beautiful old Victorian house, which has been entirely redone as a museum featuring all the furniture and furnishings and knickknacks from the Victorian era. And it's a very special place. And I did 3 postcards for them. This is the most recent of the commercial cards I did. This was brought to me by Hal and Sonia Ottlinger, who known as the Lemon Lady, who has a very special lemonade stand that she brings around to various venues in the summer to sell her lemonade. Squeezing for you since '92, 30th anniversary. 2007, my wife and I moved to Carrizozo, New Mexico, which is a tiny town in the south central part of the state. On a good day, the population is about 1,000. And it's very isolated, but it's a haven for artists of all kinds. And this is the Heritage Museum, which was the first postcard I did for the town. And I ended up becoming a board member and also a volunteer. I man the front desk on alternate Thursdays. And if anyone should happen to come to Carrizozo, this is one of the best places to visit. It has several incredible exhibits about the railroad history of the town and the ranching history of the area. Very well worth a visit, if I do say so. I thought our town deserved a big name postcard. I've always been fascinated by the big name postcards, and this was one I just thought had to be made. There is our main street down in the corner, and in the left-hand corner is some of the chorizo plant, which is this bamboo-like plant which grows in the area, and it grew in such abundance that the town was named Carrizozo. The extra zo was added because there was so much of the plant around. This is the second in a series. It's the map of the town that I thought needed to be in existence. This is the entirety of the town. As you can see, the original town, which was founded in 1899, the streets were parallel to the railroad track. And then after 1910, when we became the county seat of Lincoln County, the additional streets were built at a different angle, which kind of makes it a little confusing. After 15 years, I still have trouble getting around town sometimes, or figuring out exactly where I am. My house is like over to the right where the to the left where the public school is. I'm right just to the right of the public schools. I got my directions mixed up. Yeah. This is the Carrizozo Market. We like to say that Carrizozo has 4 art galleries, but no supermarket, no grocery store. This is a grocery store that opened in 2010, and it was it prospered for maybe 3 or 4 years, and then it closed. So we no longer have a grocery store, but the art galleries are still going, and we hope we'll get a grocery store at some point. This was another of the local businesses that came to me for a postcard, the 54 Emporium, which sold, as you can see, all kinds of things. It was a real novelty emporium for the town. And it's no longer here, of course. The Carrizozo Artist Studio Tour started in 2015, and we've had 5 annual studio tours. The last one was in 2019, and then the COVID came, and so we haven't really had one since then. I've done a postcard for each one of them. This was the 3rd annual tour in 2017. This was one of 37 cards I've done for Carrizozo and for various businesses around town. The Carrizozo Film Office has recently been established to attract movie production to the town. In the past couple of years, in fact, there have been like 3 motion pictures shot here. And there were, earlier in the decade, there were maybe 3 or 4 others. So we're fast becoming kind of a location destination for movie companies. These last 2 cards were cards I made to accompany the 2 graphic novels I did for that deal with stories of local history. Billy the Kid is a famous fixture in Lincoln County. Although he didn't die in Lincoln County, he spent a lot of his time here. And this is a graphic novel I did about the death of Billy the Kid. The Lincoln County War was one of the famous events of the area in 1878. And no one had ever done a graphic story, a graphic novel version of it. So I thought it was a long past time to do something like this. And this is the postcard I did reflecting the cover art of the graphic novel. And so this brings us up to date, everyone. I thank you very much. That's all, folks.
Thank you, Rick. Oh my golly. Just amazing. I mean, we're all smiling, and such a feel-good opportunity to be with you this afternoon. Let me ask Bill Burton to please unmute himself and to review any questions that we have, please.
Well, let's start off with the graphic novels. The question is, would you be willing to do a graphic novel for the Wichita BTK murder? Now, BTK is a mystery to me, so could you explain that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was living in Wichita in 1974 when the first BTK crimes were committed, and some of my friends on the newspaper, some of my friends who worked at the Eagle, were instrumental in getting that story out there. And another friend of mine, believe it or not, was considered a person of interest for a brief time in that case. I think the BTK story is a little too recent for me. I need to have kind of a detached attitude toward a lot of these grisly crimes. They need to be a little bit farther in the past than even the 1970s.
Yeah, Rick, help me. Doesn't BTK stand for bind, torture, kill?
That's true, yes.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, Dennis Rader looks a lot like me, or I look a lot like him. So I'm not eager to see that out there, but I figure that's on your to-do list for someday.
Well, someday. Yes.
Right. Hal Ottaway is being a troublemaker, but he asks, show us your Gumby t-shirt, please.
Oh, it's probably backwards there on the...
No, it's perfect.
Fine.
Perfect.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
He's fun, he's flexible.
Ashley writes, Rick, what is the process for commissioning you to create a postcard?
Well, first of all, I should mention that I haven't raised my prices in 30 years. Ask $150 for full color, $75 for black and white. And my clients usually come to me via email, and they send me whatever ideas they might have for the card, including photographs or any other kind of reference. And then I will submit a pencil rough for approval before proceeding to the final art.
Okay, what's the lead time for all of that?
Let's see, I would say a couple weeks maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not counting the printing. I'm just, this is just for the artwork.
Right. Hal Holloway's at it again, and he said, Leon Rose black cowboy hat in Dolores's cards. That's not a question. I don't know what it is, but whatever.
She insists on my including the black cowboy hat in every card that she does. It was a trademark of Leon's.
Ah, okay.
It's remembering Leon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Tamara Swint says Roz Lane was a real estate agent. True?
Yeah.
Like Lane Real Estate, yes. Oh, they must know each other.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Roslyn, she's the past president of the Dallas Club, but she just recently retired as a real estate agent.
Oh, okay. Well, that's how she got in touch with me then, through the Postcard Club.
Okay. And I'm sure I'm going to butcher her name, but Jerry Danilay, excuse me, Jerry. How many of these postcards are normally produced for each print run? I'm referring to the personal cards, not the commercial products.
Well, that of course depends on the individual client. Usually it's 500 to 250 to 500, I would think.
Okay. George Eberhardt wants to know, what project is it that involves doors, chairs, and stairs and architectural features? I saw it on your Facebook community page.
Yes, that is a collection I've just come out with, which is mostly of drawings I've done over the past several years, which are odd and unusual interiors. I don't. It's hard for me to describe any of them, but they're fanciful and whimsical. That's really all I can, as far as I can go with that.
That sounds pretty good. Hal's at it again. Morgan Williams commissioned at least 2 postcards promoting his interest in exaggerated postcards. True or false?
Yes, I remember those 2. I wish I could put everyone's card up.
We almost did.
Came close, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Ashley Aaron says, what a body of work. How many cards did you say you thought you produced?
Well, it's well over 1,000 by now.
Uh-huh.
It was, yeah, over a period of what, like 45 years now.
Okay. What other kinds of artwork do you do besides postcards? I mean, in broad strokes.
Well, whatever comes along, basically, I just, I'm a freelance artist. I've worked in my own studio for 45 years now, and I just take whatever work people come to me with, illustrations or comic books or graphic novels or graphic stories. I pretty much do it all.
Well, here comes now the praise part of this whole thing. Jared Delaoke says, wonderful work, Rick. You're an incredibly talented and versatile illustrator.
Well, I like to hear that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That ends the list of comments that I have here.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'm just, one thing, you go back to those classic comics that you did, the 3 that you did for the, when they started to try to get another shot in the arm. But when anybody takes a book and looks at the whole book and has to read it, and then to divide it into little squares and pages of a comic book, just think of that job and think of the work and what a nightmare that would be for me. But now maybe not for you, but I really take my hat off to you for any of that.
Well, thank you. It was a complicated process, and but I enjoyed it as kind of a change of pace from sitting down and drawing pictures. This, it was all taking notes, using the yellow highlighter on the pages, and bits of dialogue, and it took a while, but
Sure.
enjoyed it very much.
Sure. Character development, all of those things. It would just, it's very, very exciting and neat to know Rick and to follow him all these years. It's been a real treat, and we are so lucky, our club, to have had him for all of these years and to have done all of our cards. Let me just say that for the very first show, we didn't know an artist. We just came up and said, wow, postcard show, we ought to have a postcard for our show. And so what happened, I'll be brief about this, but Hal Ross, I think, and Bert Jones went downtown and found a rack of postcards, and they picked off maybe 20 or 30, let's just say, of about 5 different Wichita chrome postcards. Now, that was in the 70s, so it was the smaller card, not the Continental card that we have today. Then they took that to a print shop in Wichita, and they had it overprinted, first Wichita Postcard Club Show. And that was our card. We had like 4 or 5 different ones for sale at the registration table. Postcard shows, we did the show to begin with in order to get postcard dealers to bring us postcards to our town. We had gone through all of the cards in the local antique shops, and this was before malls, before everything, back in the 70s. And so we were desperate here in Kansas to have a postcard show. There wasn't anything in Oklahoma. There was maybe the one in Kansas City, but we didn't quite know. Anyway, we've come a long ways. We had a lot of fun. We've met a lot of people, and we just thank you, Rick, for being there with us all of those years.
Thank you. And I love drawing postcards, and I have to give full credit to Hal for setting me out on this path.
Well, that's been fun. Let me just say about the member card. I think we're the only club that I know of that does a member card. And usually if you join a club, you get a little one that fits in your billfold. Well, we thought from the beginning, we ought to have a postcard membership card. And so that's why that's why they are as they are all of these years. I think you said since 1988 or something like that. And I think it was B.J. Davies that suggested, why don't we have a membership card? But anyway, we give 3 cards away every year that are Rick Geary cards, and they're great to look at and a treasure, and we just thank you so much.
Well, thank you.